We're not going anywhere, we're just going to be taking shots from the balcony itself. Having a little bit of an admin day whilst we're on our trip in Malta, been editing, importing, creating proxies, booking various things, and just, doing a whole host of admin. For us, it's good to have these days within a trip, because of course the work that we do is on this channel, and need to have those down days to stay on top of things. But it crossed my mind recently of, wouldn't it be cool to have like a little bit of maybe a running series of photography from the hotel balcony. Quite often when we book hotels, one of the deciding factors is the view from the room, and I'll even put little notes in when we make the booking saying, hey, we're photographers, would love a great view, if you can help, thanks. And sometimes when you arrive at the check-in desk, they're like, oh, I saw your note, we've put you on the top floor, and that's kind of what's happened here. So yeah, sort of had this idea of getting some photography purely from the balcony. We're not going anywhere, we're just going to be taking shots from the balcony itself. If this works out quite fun, this could be a little series that travels around with us to all the different hotels that we go to whilst we're traveling. Alright, let's set up and see what we can see. So I'm going to start off by mentioning the cameras that I'm shooting with. So of course, I've got my Fujifilm X-T4 and I've put the 16 to 80 on, so that's going to give me a great range of super wide angle into some medium to longer views at the 80mm range. F4 is going to be plenty fine. For this, I'm not looking for any shallow depth of field, so I'm probably going to be shooting mostly around 5.6 to f7 or so. And then I have the second camera. So this is my Canon R5. Predominantly I use this for video, but I have recently bought the 70-200. And so because I have the 70-200, this is the longest of my lenses. I didn't bring any longer lenses for my Fuji, just so that I'm not carrying too much stuff. So I'll get some video clips with this. And if I want to switch to photography, I can get some photos with this. But I think in all honesty, the extra 200mm for this view isn't going to be adding too much extra. Other views, different locations maybe, but for what we've got in front of us here, I don't think we're going to see a huge benefit with that. And this is the view. As I mentioned, when we book our hotels, I do generally take into account the view from the balcony as a big deciding factor. And so this hotel, which is the Mercure St. Julian's, I booked this one because it's one of the nicest rooms for the area that we wanted to be in within Malta, but also because of this view across St. Julian's Bay, Spinola Bay, which is this little bit down here. Yeah, and we just got a great vantage point. As soon as we arrived, I felt immediately happy because obviously it's been a long time since we've been able to travel to places, and just opening the curtains and seeing that as the view that we were greeted with. Instant remedy. Loved it. Ooh, it is very bright. So we are currently at about 5:10. So we are currently looking south. That is towards Valletta over there. Hopefully you haven't got too much construction noise coming in on the microphone. So south towards Valletta. The sun is setting in the west over there, and of course the sun rises in the east. I have done a couple of time lapses in the mornings. They haven't come out too special. We haven't really been greeted with too much cloud movement or anything, but I'm going to try a time lapse this evening. I'm going to set that up on the R5 momentarily. And yeah, we're seeing kind of patches. I'm going to be a bit of a weatherman now. We're seeing kind of patches of blue sky. We've got a few rain clouds over in the distance and some clouds up ahead, and that's just creating some areas of, or pockets of light across the buildings, which I really love seeing because it adds that layer of depth. As you see across the buildings, you sort of see the shadows and you see the layers, and I love a densely packed city. In fact, one of my go-tos for taking images here is to get a almost full frame of just the packed skyline. So all you see are just buildings, back-to-back buildings, and I love that. It's one of my absolute favorite types of shots. I get them all over the place. So yeah, I'm just going to reel off a few shots down here looking towards the bay and just getting some of the glows, get some wide angles. One of my favorite things about this particular view here is there's like this little pocket, there's a road that just kind of comes through and you just see cars if we can time that nicely with a vehicle coming through, or maybe some interesting characters walking through, something like that, should be quite good. Just switching over to the 70-200 now, and I'll shoot some video and get some photos as well. Of course, being up on the balcony with a telephoto lens, you got to be careful not to be zooming in onto other people's balconies and other people's properties, and you know, you don't want to be the perv on the balcony with the big lens. That being said, it is nice to have a good view deep into some of the urban locations, so such as this area with the road and the bay, and you really do get a different perspective being higher up and looking with a longer lens. A top tip, by the way, if you're shooting with a camera of a higher megapixel count, so the R5 has, I believe, 42 megapixels, and you're shooting video, one of the things that you can do to get a greater length to your lens is to enable the crop mode on your sensor. So that will change this 200mm at full frame to around a 250mm equivalent field of view when you enable the crop mode and you film. For photography, not really going to make much of a difference in camera, because of course you can always crop afterwards in things like Lightroom and Capture One. But for video, in order to get that same resolution, crop mode gives you that extra length with your camera, which is very useful to have. I should add, by the way, that all of my images I'm going to be editing with my Urban Stone Volume 2 collection. So those are some Lightroom presets. They are also compatible with Capture One. So this is my first time creating some Capture One styles. I've been using Capture One for the last year or so, and I've been interchangeably going between Lightroom and Capture One. I know there's a lot of Fuji users who use Capture One, so hopefully these styles will allow you to get the Urban Stone collection. And I'm potentially going to go through my back catalogue of Lightroom presets and also make some conversions of those, depending on whether it's something that is of interest to you or not. So yeah, drop your thoughts in the comments about those. Alrighty, so we're getting close to the golden hour now. The sun currently has just dipped behind a massive rain cloud, but that should eventually break through. So I'm going to be setting up the time lapse. Now I will be using the lens that is currently being used to film me, which is the 24-70. So I'm not going to be able to add any extra narrative, and we will end with the time lapse. But just to give you a little bit of a heads up, I'm going to be shooting at a 6-second interval. So taking notes from my favorite time lapse photographer, Matt van der Poel, and using a 6-second interval, which is great for urban scenes with cars and people moving. And I'm going to be running this for about an hour or so. I'll keep an eye on the sun and see when it gets dark and how long that's going to take. And I will then stitch it together using LR time-lapse and yeah, piece together a little narrative. In terms of the support for the time-lapse, I am of course going to be using my special no tripod setup. So I've featured this in many videos in the past. I'll leave a link up to the original one, which goes through how this was built. So this is essentially a Manfrotto super clamp with a magic arm, and I'm going to be clamping it directly to the glass of the balcony. Don't worry, it's super secure, very stable, and I'll keep the camera overhanging this side of the balcony. And that will just reel off a load of shots for the time lapse, and yeah, I'll just let that stay running for a while. Hopefully this could be a video series that I can do all around the world at other hotels and places that I stay, because as I mentioned, we quite often have admin days, and one of the best things about this setup is you are working within the guidelines of just your balcony, so you can't really move anywhere else. All that is changing is going to be the weather and your lens selection and other things. So the guidelines of your viewpoint and seeing everything behind is a great opportunity to work with. So yeah, I want to do more of these in other places. I hope you've enjoyed this one, and we'll end with that time lapse, and I'll catch you in another video real soon. I hope you've been enjoying the Malta series, and I look forward to more travel super soon. All right, thanks for watching everyone. See you later. Bye bye.